Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Reviewable with Micah and Braden.
It is.
Are you just gonna scroll on your phone the whole time?
No, I'm not doing that. Why would you gaslight me and the audience like that?
You're so dumb.
That's ridiculous.
What did we watch this week?
The Iron Claw. This came out in 2023, I think. Did it come out before the new year? It might have been. It was like right around the time of the new year, so this is a newer movie. And it has Mr. Zac Efron and Mr. Oh, what's that guy's name? From The Bear. Carmy. Jeremy Allen White, that's his name. And what's it about, Micah?
It's about a family that is into wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like WWE type stuff, right?
That's putting it mildly. That they're into wrestling.
Well, I guess they do this as their job, but it's like WWE-ish, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not hitting people with chairs, but
it's not real wrestling. It's
choreographed-ish.
yeah, it's the spectacle wrestling that you would see in WWE. But their dad was a professional wrestler and always felt that he was never given
the shot that he deserved.
Right, to be like the most famous or the world champion
organization.
Yeah. And so he has a bunch of sons, and they are influenced heavily by their dad.
He grooms them to be professional wrestlers.
Yes, yeah. And so they all become pro wrestlers. And this is based on a true story. There are some notable things that the main character was not happy about when the movie came out. Kevin, his real life counterpart. But this is basically just, I guess one thing we should mention is, so this family is called the Von Erich family, and they, I guess it was said of them by the people that lived near them. They're from Texas. So in their town in Texas, it was sort of a known thing that the Von Erich family was cursed. That the Von Erich name was cursed. And this movie follows the family. Specifically, it follows Kevin, who's Zac Efron's character, and the misfortune that happens to the family as they try to become world champions and try to, reach their goals and all that.
Yeah. So just really quickly, the main people in this are the dad, the mom, and they have, 5 kids? Four sons? Kevin?
Yeah.
Carrie,
Mike, and then
David.
Is that his name?
Yeah, David. And then they had an oldest brother who passed away when he was really little.
Yeah, right.
But the 4 kids. There's 4 of them.
That we see in the movie.
And then Kevin gets married to Pam?
Yeah, right.
Is that her name?
Yeah, the actress that is, she's in Baby Driver, and she's also Cinderella from the live-action Cinderella. What's her freaking name, too? Lily James. Played by Lily James.
So, just really quickly, when the movie starts, it seems as though Kevin is, the quote-unquote chosen son.
Yeah.
That the dad is trying to make the world champion.
Yeah.
And this is set right around the time of the Cold War, because the Olympics get canceled.
Yeah.
And so Carrie, the brother right under Kevin, comes back from training for the Olympics, and Carrie, Kevin, and David become a trio wrestling team.
Yeah.
And so when Carrie comes back, they're wrestling together. And then it seems like the dad picks David, who's the third son in the lineup, to be the main son to become the world champion.
Because there's a part at the beginning of the movie that's kind of funny where they're all having breakfast together, and the dad is like, "Now remember, Carrie's my favorite, followed by Kevin, then David, then Mike." but the rankings can always change. But that's, at least in this movie, that is definitely how the dad thinks. It's not just a throwaway joke. Like the family is a meritocracy, in the sense that whoever is doing the best athletically is going to be the dad's favorite.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to hide that fact.
Yeah. And so the youngest son, Michael, he wants to be a musician. He's not really athletic. He doesn't really want to be a wrestler.
Yeah.
And the dad is always ragging on Michael, on Mike. You need to bulk up and start training so that you can get into the ring.
And at the very beginning of the movie, Kevin tries to talk to his mom, and he's like,
Mom, you need to talk to Dad. He's too tough on Mike.
And the mom is like, that's between them. That's between your dad and Mike. Talk to your brothers. Don't talk to me. That's what your brothers are for.
Which is, I was like shocked when she said that. Like, wow, okay, I guess that's how this family is run. But it's definitely something that if you watch this movie, to like definitely keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, at a certain point, the dad switches from Kevin being the main son to David being the main son, and that causes tension. Basically, you're following this story through Kevin's eyes, and at the very beginning of the story, they say that they all loved their dad, and you can tell that they all loved their dad. And as time goes on, he slowly starts to become disillusioned with his dad because of some of the decisions that the dad makes, just him having David leapfrog Kevin is the start of it, and then other things happen, and by the end, Kevin is very much not a fan of his dad.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie. How much do we want to talk about what happens?
No.
You don't want to? Should we rate it then? Because it's going to be...
really fast, this is a drama, sports, sad movie. Is that how you would classify it?
A tragedy?
Yeah, tragedy.
Nice.
Is that what you would classify it as?
Yeah, it's definitely a tragedy, I would say.
I will say, though, that when we watched this, it is a sad movie. But Braden kind of... What's the right word? It's not hyped it up as being super sad, but I can't think of another word for it.
Well, Micah never wants to watch a sad movie. And I was like, well, if you think that Beautiful Boy is sad, then...
Because I got halfway through the movie Beautiful Boy.
And had to turn it off.
And had to turn it off because I was so depressed. And I will say, I don't think this is as sad as Beautiful Boy.
I haven't seen Beautiful Boy, but I don't see how that's possible. And we'll discuss why when we discuss spoilers. Everybody does a good job in this movie, though.
Oh, yeah, the acting is great. I think they did a really good job of putting you in the era of when the story went on.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's an A24 movie, so in a similar way to what was that Nicolas Cage movie that we watched, Dream Scenario? I was getting similar vibes from the cinematography. And the color grading and all that. Yeah. It looks oldish,
mm-hmm.
but in a crisp, kind of clean way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the editing is really cool too. Okay.
Well, the script was good.
Yeah.
The acting was great. The cast did an amazing job.
Right. Yeah. All the brothers did their work.
Yeah. And just the way that their relationship with their dad changed, and because the relationship with their dad changed, it changed with each other. Just felt so realistic.
Yeah. So let's just rate it, and then we'll talk about
spoilers.
Yeah, some spoilers. I think this movie deserves a hearty 8.5. Triple drop kicks.
Nice.
Out of 10.
I think I'm going to rate this a 7. Sneak away in the night college parties.
Out of 10.
Out of 10.
right. Spoiler time. So...
Oh, wait. Before spoilers, parental guide. I think this is rated R.
For language. There's a sex scene, but, like, you don't see anything.
No, it's, like, in the dark.
Yeah. That's probably it.
Yeah.
There's language. There's a tiny bit of violence, but, again, you don't really see it. At the very, very end.
Oh, yeah, you don't see it.
Yeah.
I would say it's mostly just for language. And even then, the language isn't horrible, I felt like.
No. I didn't notice it very much.
No.
Okay.
Okay, spoilers ahead.
So there's a scene near the beginning of the movie. They own a gym, a wrestling gym called the Sportatorium, the family. I guess technically the dad owns it at the beginning of the movie. The dad's name is Fritz, by the way. And they own this gym, and it's evening, and Kevin is making his way into the gym because he's going to be performing that night, and there's a song playing, and the song is Don't Fear the Reaper, which is
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
Did you put it out?
It's the cowbell song, the one that I
didn't even think about it, though.
We listen to during spooky season and during other times because it's a really good song.
During cowbell season.
Yeah. If any of you have seen the famous SNL skit with It Needs More Cowbell, that's this song. But the song itself is about death and accepting death and not being afraid of death. And it is a very fitting choice for what happens later in the movie. And I think that it's something that probably is going to go over most people's heads, but I think
it went over my head.
I think that song choice was very intentional, because you're seeing the brothers be happy and interact with each other, and like the excitement of going to the wrestling event, but there's like a looming sense of dread that's coming.
So let's just jump into the curse.
Yeah.
So, the Von Erichs supposedly are cursed. So I'm just going to spoil what happens to these kids.
Yep.
Okay, so Kevin gets skipped. Honestly, lucky him.
Yeah.
That his dad did not favor him, in my opinion. Okay, so David is the favorite. He's supposed to become world champion. He is pushing himself so far when he's out on tour, going to all of these events, that he somehow ruptures his intestine and is throwing up blood, and he's out in Japan for an event, and he dies alone in his hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
So then the family gets together, and the dad is like, okay, I need one of you, Kevin or Carrie, to step up and be the next world champion.
Like right after the funeral.
Right after.
Yeah.
And Kevin's like, I'll do it. And Carrie's like, no, Dad, I'll do it. It should be me. I'll do it. So then the favor goes to Carrie. Skips over Kevin again. And Carrie wins. He becomes world champion. He gets his belt that night. He is so amped up. He's like, I need to go for a ride on my motorcycle to, chill out. They don't show it. He gets into an accident and he loses one of his feet. He has to get amputated.
Yeah. So he can't wrestle at this point anymore.
And
then they decide to involve Mike,
the youngest son, who's not athletic, who's a musician. And I think it's his first event.
Yeah.
He does a move wrong and he falls on his shoulder and he has to get surgery. And while he's in surgery, some freak thing happened and his temperature spiked and was at 107 for 2 hours. So he was in a coma, and then he was out of a coma, and his brain wasn't totally right. He was mentally disabled a little bit.
Because of the fever.
Yeah. And then after a while, he feels like the family is putting too much pressure on him to get back into the ring and just be someone that he's not. So he overdoses, but then runs away.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, he swallows an entire bottle of pills, washes it down with beer, and then walks out into the woods and dies.
Yeah.
Overdoses. So that's 2 brothers gone now. And then
Kevin tries to take over the sportatorium, and it's just, I don't think his heart is really in it.
yeah, well, because he's like,
Oh, yeah.
in between he has a kid, and then he's afraid that he's going to curse his kids by being around them. And so
with the Von Erich curse.
Yeah, he spends less and less time with his wife and with his kids, so that's causing strain.
And when his kid is born, he has his kid not take the Von Erich last name.
I can't remember exactly what changes, but at a certain point he decides that he's going to go back to and live with his family and just be done
with wrestling,
pursuing wrestling seriously like he has been. And then that's a big tonal shift, and you're like, okay, good. He's overcoming this belief in the curse and all the misfortune and all that.
My thought on the curse. Are you done explaining it, or can I get my?
Well, there's one more.
Oh, okay, go.
So, at a certain point, Kevin is, happily with his family again.
He's a stay-at-home dad.
And Kerry works himself back into the ring, but he leaves the sportatorium, so he's under a new organization that's managing him. And Kerry has become the favorite again because Kevin is not really wrestling anymore, so the dad doesn't care about him. And he's a big fan of Kerry. I think at this point also Kevin he's managing the sportatorium, and he's received an offer from someone to buy it, and he wants to sell because their family's growing, they need to move into a house, and right now his wife is the only one really providing money. He's taking care of the kids during the day. So, all of these classic roles that I guess Kevin is supposed to be filling, he's not doing the wrestling, he's not doing the providing, he's not, he's staying at home with the kids.
Roles.
And so his dad doesn't respect him at this point. And he tells Kevin that if he sells the sportatorium, he can never set foot in the house again, basically. And then Kerry comes home for Christmas, and it's clear that something's up with him.
It seems like he's on something.
Yeah.
He's all over the place.
Yeah. And, events happen. Eventually, he shoots himself in the head outside of the family farm.
Because he feels so much pressure to be a good wrestler.
Well, and
but his company drops him.
He's getting dropped because he can't. With his foot, he just can't do what he used to be able to do. And he's on drugs, and he's unstable. And so he kills himself. And Kevin finds him.
Kerry calls Kevin, "I'm not doing okay. The company is going to drop me. I'm so depressed. I don't want to be here anymore." And Kevin's like, "Dude, how can you say that to me? Don't do anything. I'm coming to get you. Let's meet at Mom and Dad's. We'll have breakfast. Or let's go." He's trying to do everything so that he doesn't lose his last brother.
Right.
And he gets off the phone with Kerry, immediately calls his dad, and he's like, "Dad, Kerry's going to come to the house. Keep an eye out for him. He's not doing okay. I'm really worried about him."
Yeah.
And what does the dad say?
"That's between you and your brother."
So he doesn't keep an eye out for him.
Exactly what the mom said.
Yeah.
About Mike.
So
at the beginning of the movie.
Kevin drives as fast as he can over to his parents' house, and he's looking around. He's about to walk into the house to try and find Kerry, and he hears a gunshot.
And Kerry shot himself outside against a tree. And then the dad shows up very shortly after, and then they get into a fight.
And the dad is like, "Why didn't you take care of him?"
Well, no, Kevin blames the dad, and then the dad blames him back.
It was so stupid. It made me so mad.
And then at the very end of the movie, Kevin is watching his kids play, and he's just breaking down because he is no longer a brother. And he's sad about it. And then the kids are like, "It's okay, Dad." And the dad's like, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't cry. Men don't cry." They're like, "What are you talking about? We cry all the time." And so it's like, you can see that his family is starting to
hopefully change.
You know, deprogram him from what his dad turned him into. There's a lot of good things that his dad instilled in him. You know, work ethic, being tough, being mentally strong. But there's also a lot of bad things that came with that mentality that he gave Kevin. And the movie ends with like a little bit of, you know, hope that he's going to turn a corner and he's going to be different. There's also a really interesting scene because Kevin carries Carrie. You like that? Mm-hmm. Kevin carries Carrie into the house after Carrie shoots himself.
Wait, I want to talk about the curse, though.
Okay.
Can we talk about that first?
Yeah, sure.
So
there's this really interesting scene.
You brat. I don't believe that their family is cursed.
No.
I think it's the dad's fault.
The curse is the dad.
Yeah.
At least that's how this movie frames it.
Yeah. Because, you know, they've been told that they're cursed. So in my opinion, they are cursed because they feel like they are. Uh-huh. So every little thing that goes wrong. Granted, these are huge things that went wrong. These kids killing themselves or dying, right?
Yeah.
And it's the dad's fault. He pushed them too far. He played favorites. He didn't help them mentally. He didn't help them be, in my opinion, nice men, like or strong.
Stable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was his fault, in my opinion.
They're unwilling to get help. And I think that's the problem that kills all of the brothers that die. Because if you think about David, he is coughing up blood. Kevin catches him coughing up blood and tells him he needs to go see a doctor.
No.
He's not willing to do that because you know, a man shouldn't need to ask for help. He should just work harder, and he'll be okay. That's another thing also in the movie that Kevin keeps saying, that his dad would teach them that if they were the strongest, if they were the toughest, if they were the hardest working, nothing could ever hurt them, and so they believed that. And because of that, David doesn't get help. He dies. Carrie, it's clear that he's got like substance issues the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get help. He doesn't get help when Kevin says, "Come over to my house, it'll be okay." He feels like he just needs to be alone and deal with it, or he needs to kill himself. And that's what happens. And then Mike, same thing. He doesn't stand up to his dad because you just do what dad expects of you.
No, and the other thing is they don't know their dad. At some point during the movie, Mike is like, yeah, I've got this gig with this quartet, you know, trying to tell his, like, share something about himself with his family. Even though he's, like, in a band, it's not really, you know. And his mom is like, oh, just like your dad. You're musical, just like your dad. And everyone's like, what?
Right.
It's like, yeah, your dad used to play the clarinet, and he was really good at it.
He had, like, a scholarship, too.
Yeah, and he's like, but music doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is sports.
I chose sport, and I was right.
Like, they don't know him. All they know is he's in charge, and you have to do what he says. And you're trying to win his favoritism.
So the parents do what parents should in terms of providing a house and providing a environment that's non-abusive, and, you know, just...
It is abusive, though. That is abusive.
In a way. What I would say is they're neglectful. They don't support their kids, and they haven't supported their kids emotionally like they should have. Because they're just not used to that. They don't think it's important. They think that's what the brothers are for. And that's, yeah. So that style of parenting is the curse for these kids.
It's just sad. But not as sad as Beautiful Boy.
See, I don't know how that's possible, Micah.
We should watch that movie.
I really don't know how that's possible. Freaking 3 of his brothers die in the space of not a lot of time, and then he's left all by himself because of the circumstances of their family. And then in Beautiful Boy, it's just about 1 kid, which is sad, but 3 of his brothers.
It just didn't have the same emotional impact for me.
There's an interesting scene where Kevin lays Carrie down on the table after he carries Carrie into the house. And it's almost like So Carrie is rowing a boat across a river, and then on the other side of the river, he meets his dead brothers, and they all are together again. And I think in the suicide note that Carrie wrote, he said, "I'm going to see my brothers," or something like that. I couldn't really tell if that was Kevin imagining them being reunited, or if it was, like, true.
I thought about it as, this is Carrie in the afterlife.
Right.
That's how I thought about it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was that or if that was Kevin hoping that that's where Carrie was, or what the deal was. But that was an interesting scene, and they even meet their little kid brother that died before they were all born, and it's a nice scene, right? Very nice little scene.
I am glad. I liked that they put that in there.
Okay, so now I want to discuss for a little bit what I learned about, like, the real Kevin Von Erich's reaction to this movie. And he said, okay, so first of all, they had another brother.
Oh, there were 6 of them?
Yes. And this brother, so the real Michael was athletic. He did kill himself. He did really have, like, the temperature spike and all that. But he was athletic and he was into wrestling. This other brother had brittle bones, wasn't ever able to really compete in sports, and also ended up killing himself. So he had, what is that now, five brothers that died, 4 of them by suicide. Is that right?
No, David didn't kill himself.
I'm losing track of the numbers.
The oldest kid was a toddler when he died.
Yeah, accident.
David was a ruptured intestine.
Yeah.
Carrie killed himself. Michael killed himself.
Okay.
Brittle-boned brother killed him. So he had 3 brothers that killed themselves.
Committed suicide.
And 2 of them were accidental. And 2.
5 brothers that died.
Yeah. That is...
But Kevin Von Erich said it made sense for the sake of the movie to combine Mike and Chris is the name of the other brother.
Yeah, that does make sense.
So he didn't really have a problem with that. What he did have a problem with was the way that the movie framed the dad as the reason for the suicides. He said that, in his opinion, it's not the dad's fault. In his opinion, it was the drugs and the alcohol and the substance abuse that made them all so unstable. The dad was... in his opinion, the dad was always an honorable, good man that loved them. So Kevin Von Erich didn't like the portrayal of the dad.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's worth repeating. I would say watch this, though. It's worth watching. As long as you're okay with being sad. Being way sadder than you would if you watched Beautiful Boy.
That's the thing, though. It didn't stick with me the same way that Beautiful Boy did. I was thinking about that movie. I only watched half of it. I was thinking about it for 2 days afterwards. This one, we finished, and I was like, okay, well, should we go to bed?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It is sad. It's a very sad story. It just didn't affect me the same way. It was all... I don't know.
Alright. Maybe that's because you're spending the whole time with one brother. And in this one, they got to kill off 4 brothers real quick. So you don't get that much time with them.
Yeah, fair.
It probably would have been really emotional if Kevin ended up killing himself, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he made it through all that nonsense.
Also, I have to say, people have been speculating about Zac Efron getting jaw filler, because he doesn't look the same as he did, I don't know, 10 years ago. Rumor has it he shattered his jaw and had to get reconstructive surgery, and that's why he looks so different.
Shattered his jaw how?
I don't know.
He's massive.
Yeah, he is massive.
In this movie.
And that's roids. He's looked like that for a while.
Okay.
But
well, I thought it was for this movie that he got.
No, he's extra big here, but he's been big for a while. But that's what I heard about his jaw, his face looking so different, is he had to get reconstructive surgery.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you...
That's the Iron Claw.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So I continued watching Mr. Inbetween. I was thinking about, there's only 3 seasons of the show, and I had reported already on season 1. I was thinking about just waiting until I finished the whole series before talking about it again. But season 2 deserves a special little chit-chat. So season 1, I believe I gave it a 9.2. It's very funny. It's very fun. It's also just great drama. It's like when it's dramatic, it's gripping, it's intense, it's fun, can be violent. When it's funny, it's hilarious, and you get to see this hitman living his mundane life, and being a realistic dad and being a good dad to his daughter, and it's just like it's very easy to get wrapped up in his story. Season 2 is it's hilarious as well when it's funny, but it's heavy and like just very thought-provoking and sometimes very touching. So it took what was good about season 1 and added like this layer of depth to it that I was really kind of floored by. Yeah, so I will say in season 2 they deal with some really heavy topics. Without going into too much detail, and again, like, this is a violent show, but it never shows more than it should, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the violence is implied. I was telling Micah, there's an episode where Ray gets contracted by a father who lost his daughter years and years ago, and they suspect that it was like she was kidnapped, and that's the subject matter of this episode. Very heavy. Like a girl that was kidnapped, abused, and killed. Most likely they never found her, and his job is to intimidate the man that they suspect is responsible into admitting where the daughter is so that the family can have closure. That's what this episode's about. There's another episode where he is taking his daughter and her friend just for the day. Like, they're just having a fun day, and they're in a sporting goods store, and then the 2 girls get on bikes and they start riding around, and one of the girls goes missing, gets kidnapped. And the whole episode is him like trying to find this girl. And this is what I love about the main character. He's a hitman, like Barry, but it's very clear that he has a code, and he has jobs that he won't take, he has lines that he won't cross, and he has values. And it seems like one of his values is, if you mess with kids, he is gonna mess you up. And so the whole episode is him burning bridges left and right, trying to figure out where this girl is, because that's all that's important to him. But it is one of the most intense, like, jaw-clenching episodes of TV that you'll ever see, with an ending that is so freaking justified and satisfying, and you're like, yeah, I like Ray. Even though he's violent and he does what he does for a living, I can't help but cheer for this guy, because when it comes down to like the most important things, it seems like his values are in the right place. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is one of the best this is a perfect season of TV. And I haven't seen very many of those, but this is one of them, and this is one of the best shows I've seen in a very, very long time.
Since The Bear.
I like this. Yeah, I like this better than The Bear. This season 2 versus The Bear season 2. Because The Bear season 2 was like very near perfect, and there were a couple of perfect episodes. This one, I had no complaints about any episodes. They're all that good. Oh, and the very last episode of this season made me tear up.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
What?
Yeah. And I never
Ever.
Hardly ever.
I think I've said on the podcast before, I've only ever seen Braden cry twice.
Yeah.
So that's wild. What the heck?
Yeah. I'll tell you what happens. I think you should watch it. Because, like, this show is, like I said, it's violent. It's got violence in it. It's nowhere near as bad as some of the other stuff you've seen. And a lot of the like, really intense violence happens off screen. And it's just implied.
Oh, okay.
Right? Again, parental guide, in case people hadn't watched the season 1 review. Lots of language. This is an Australian show. They're going to be swearing a ton. There are sexual references, but there's not very much nudity at all. He sort of operates out of a strip club. That's his day job. He's a bouncer at a strip club. But I don't think they really show any nudity in the strip club. It's just like, scantily clad women pole dancing and stuff. And it's just like, it's very short. The times where he's in the strip club. It basically just serves as a location for him to get introduced to all these jobs that he's going to do. And then the rest of it is just about his life and him taking care of his daughter and him trying to juggle a relationship. And he's such a complex character. And it's written so freaking well. And last thing I wanted to say about this, I found out that the guy who plays Ray, he wrote this character. He writes every single episode. And every episode is directed by one person, which is super, super rare for TV. Usually every episode will have a different director of a season, and then there will be like a couple of writers. But I think since it's written by one person and directed by one person, and they work together so closely...
Oh, the whole show is directed by the same person.
Yeah, oh, and written by Scott Ryan, directed by Nash Edgerton, the brother the brother of Tommy, or is it the other one? Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan.
Okay.
The brother, but yeah.
Yeah. Because it's really only two people that are in charge of this show, it allows it to be so freaking focused and consistent and tight.
Yeah. And probably has the same tone.
Yes.
Of characters and
And that's part of what I think I loved about the second season is I realized that, and I was like, every episode is as good as the last one, is as good as the next one, and they all feel the same. There's not like these wide shifts like The Mandalorian, for example. There's some episodes that are really good, and then some episodes that are just dog shit, and then other episodes that just don't feel like they even belong in the show. Mm. And that's because they hired different directors and different writers.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. I don't know why. I think this, maybe it's difficult, maybe it's just too much work for one person to write an entire show and direct an entire show. But when you can pull it off, you get an unmatched level of consistency.
I will say some of the episodes that I have seen, the side, because every episode has its own story.
Yeah.
But then there's like these little side things that will happen. And the side things are written really well. Like, even though the story, like, I can't remember what the episode was. The one where the car gets stolen while he's in it?
Yeah.
Is that the same episode where they try and kill the brother-in-law?
No, that's a different one.
Oh. Well, I just think, like, it's totally, like, some of the side quests or side things that will happen completely unrelated to the main story of the episode, but somehow it totally fits. And that's fun.
Yeah. And the guy that he spares at the end of that episode, do you remember?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're a wily C-word, aren't you?"
Yeah.
that comes into massive play in season 2, and then later in season 3. Like, that's his new go-to friend besides his regular Gary friend.
Interesting.
So, yeah, this show is really tightly written. Everything, and every episode is 20 to 30 minutes, so it's easy to get through. It's fantastic. Season 2 gets a 10 bald mans out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I have 2 books I want to talk about. The first one is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and that's spelled Lacks.
Was she the woman that invented laxatives?
No.
No.
But her cells probably helped
Nice.
with it. So pretty much this is about a African American woman in the 50s who she passed away of cervical cancer, but when they went in and did the doctors went in to look at this tumor on her cervix, they took a sample of it, and it turns out that she had immortal cells. They didn't die, they kept reproducing, and they would just fill up the container that they were in, and then they would just stay consistent. They didn't like overproduce, and they wouldn't whatever. And the guy who found them basically spread them to everybody that he knew, gave them away, and all this stuff. And her family was very uneducated and kind of taken advantage, and they weren't told what was going on with their mom's cells. And so they thought they had been taken advantage of. Basically, all these things went that they didn't understand. They didn't know how their mom could still be alive, because most of them either didn't finish elementary school or didn't finish middle school, even the dad. It was the 50s.
What do you mean, still be alive? I thought she was dead.
She passed away, but they kept being told your mom's cells are still alive.
Oh.
And they didn't understand, one, how that was possible, that her cells are alive. And then they would think, how is my mom still alive? That doesn't make any sense. And so the author of this book tells Henrietta's story while also telling the story of her figuring it out. So it's like her investigating this, and as she's telling her story of investigating this, she's telling Henrietta's story throughout it. And so she gets really close with Henrietta's daughter, Deborah, and Deborah is kind of all over the place in terms of she's kind of paranoid and doesn't trust the author. I think her name is Rebecca.
You can't trust the system.
Just because they've been taken advantage of so many different times. At some point, Deborah was approached by who she thought was a lawyer, who advertised as a lawyer, and they were going to sue Johns Hopkins, who is the hospital that took their mom's cells. And it turns out this guy was just a total scam artist. He was such a huge con man that the courts basically told him it is illegal for you to submit any more lawsuits because they're all just scams. He was that big of a con man. But pretty much this woman, Henrietta Lacks, her cells helped create the polio vaccine. It helped because they kept reproducing her cells. Somehow they were able to figure out how many chromosomes, is it with an S or an M? Chromosomes. Is a normal amount for humans. Her case really helped informed consent be given to all patients, because apparently when she was getting radiation for her cancer, she was never told that she wouldn't be able to have kids anymore because of what they were doing.
Did they know at that point that was what radiation did?
Yes.
Okay.
Or they suspected. The doctors claimed that they told Henrietta, because before she passed away, she was like, when can I have more kids? After the radiation had already started, and they were like, you can't, we told you this. And she's like, no, you didn't. But some negatives that have happened from this is patients don't really trust their doctors. A lot of patients don't really trust their doctors, in that Henrietta's family apparently sued, I think, Johns Hopkins, and got a payout of over $700 million as a first payment. And so, because people have made so much money from Henrietta's cells. And so, the medical community and just people in general have kind of come to the conclusion that if the doctors or if people take a sample of your tissue and of your cells and all of that, you no longer own that sample. Even though it came from you, it's no longer a part of you and it's no longer yours. And so you can't sue and say you're making money off of this because it's no longer yours, pretty much. And the other thing was, oh no, that was it. But this is not usually the type of book that I listen to, because it's, I don't know, real.
Nonfiction.
Yeah, nonfiction. But it was really interesting. I will say the epilogue is like 45 minutes long, and I didn't really listen to that. I probably will at some point. But it does drag at some points, but the whole...
Maybe you'll find out it was all a dream in the epilogue.
But the whole story is so interesting that I just had to keep going.
Maybe it'll be like Life of Pi, and like there's an old Indian man, and he's like, tell me, were the cells real? Or were they a metaphor for something else?
But most modern medicine apparently has some form of her cells that helped create it. Like antidepressants have it. So I'm going to rate this, I think, in 8.5 HeLa cells out of 10. And then really fast, the other book that I read was Beautiful Boy.
Which wasn't that sad.
The book was actually easier to get through.
Especially compared to the Iron Claw.
Yeah, I think it's by David Sheff, or Dave Sheff. And this is just the story of a dad trying to help his son who is a meth addict. I had no idea how truly destructive meth was until I read this book. And like we've said throughout this episode, I tried to watch the movie before reading the book, and I couldn't finish the movie. And I thought that the book was going to be worse, but I was just so interested in the story and just them talking about how destructive meth is and some other hardcore drugs that I decided to just go ahead and try. It is an amazing story, I will say. Just the dad's perspective of him trying to help his son overcome this addiction and find skills to live a normal life is just amazing. Because he really goes through his kid's whole life, and when he was little, he was just an amazing little kid, and he was so smart and so talented. And then as he gets older, he's 12 and he smokes pot for the first time. What the heck? Don't do that again. And the kid, Nick, is like, I didn't even like it. I'm not going to. And then he's like 14 and the dad finds pot in his backpack. We just thought we'd try it. It's not a big deal. Like, just back off, And then he graduates high school and they find out later that the night of graduation, he tries ecstasy for the first time, and how that really got him hooked. And then he abuses alcohol, and then he starts using heroin, and then he moves on to meth. And it was really interesting because the author goes and talks to a lot of experts that are trying to research drug use and how it affects the human body. And apparently when you use meth too much, it kills your dopamine receptors. Producers. Right? And it can take around 2 years for those receptors or producers. It can take 2 years for those producers to basically heal themselves. And so for 2 years, these addicts can just be depressed and overly depressed and missing this drug that made them feel happy. But at the same time, this drug that made them feel happy was also the reason that they felt sad.
Yeah.
You know? And so it was really interesting because when he becomes an adult, a young adult, Nick has these stints of being sober for a year or a year and a half. And then he's hanging out with the wrong people, and at one point he's at a party, and he calls his dad afterward, and, you know, he's obviously high. He's like, Dad, I was at this party, and someone just was like, just take a bump of Coke, and, like, you'll be fine. And so I did it, and I'm not fine, and now I'm high. And the dad is like, why did you do that, you know? And now he has to go track down his son and get him into rehab and all of this. I will say something that I didn't love, and I can't imagine how this is as a parent because I'm not one, is Nick is from the dad's first marriage, and he got divorced when Nick was 4 maybe. And then when Nick was around 9, the dad got remarried and had since had 2 more kids. And it's kind of frustrating to hear, again, I'm not a parent, to hear the dad be so overly obsessed with Nick's addiction and Nick's safety and Nick, that in my opinion, the way that he tells the story, he kind of neglects his 2 younger kids. Who are, you know, he's missing their childhood. Them being toddlers and them being in elementary school and up into middle school. And he's not present in his younger kids' lives. And that was really sad in my opinion, because later on the author talks about how he was addicted to helping Nick overcome his addiction. Mm-hmm. And once Nick was sober, you know, the author went to therapy and had to really work on himself because it was an addiction for him. He was obsessed with taking care of his first son. This was a great book. I would really recommend it. Obviously, it talks heavily about, like, drug use and, like, there is a lot of language. But it was really, really good. I don't know. I think I would rate this a 8.75. I want to say 9, but there were just parts that kind of dragged on in his self-deprecation. Is that the right word? Is that how you say that? So I'm going to say an 8.75. Get your butt out of bed and go on a bike ride out of 10.
That's it, right?
Yeah. You have anything you're watching?
Fallout.
Oh, yeah.
Shogun.
Did the last episode come out for that?
Yeah, it did, but I don't know if I'll finish that before Mr. Inbetween because, spoiler alert, I think Mr. Inbetween's better. So I might choose to focus my attention on that this week, just finishing that, and then I'll move on to Shogun. But what about you? You're also watching Fallout?
Yeah. And I might finish the movie Beautiful Boy because Timmy Chalamet is in it.
And you like Timmy Chalamet?
Yeah.
Alright. Oh, Shorzy.
Oh, right. We're so close.
Okay, watch Shorzy. We'll talk about it next week. Bye.